Great, yeah. So Jack Chennells here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Legal Fundi. Legal Fundi is a group of law technology companies with various applications of technology applied to the legal landscape. Our primary services are two companies. The first, which is Legal Fundi, as a face value and as a market-facing solution. Legal Fundi, as is for individuals, is a service aimed at providing legal knowledge and legal responses based in real time, on demand, and in multiple African languages. We've connected with a paralegal network of around 200 advice centers across South Africa, and we facilitate, therefore, not just access to legal knowledge and guidance, but also to further on support later down the line. Lacuna Legal is the second of the companies under the group structure, and Lacuna Legal is a legal support service for SMEs and business owners, or primarily for business owners and SMEs, and ultimately it gives a full suite of legal services to support them in starting, founding, managing and ongoing operational support from a legal, compliance and regulatory standpoint. Our solution encompasses AI legal advisors, incorporates legal health assessments, investment assessments, and a range of local compliance components, or South African local compliance components that businesses need to ascribe to. We then have a suite of around 60 to 70 legal documents that they can automate via our same bot in a conversational and intuitive manner. We've got processes to guide them into understanding, so it's not just presuming everyone knows what their solution is. And the final component is that we connect SMEs and business owners with fixed price access to legal practitioners, where we facilitate the end-to-end engagement between the two parties. Payment is done up front. Scheduling is according to calendar slots, which lawyers allow us to schedule into. And so, yeah, ultimately it's got an offering across the entirety of the value chain. So we started this company when we just had registered the company. Ultimately was in October of 2020. Milestones along the way have included, one side of it from an internal perspective and from a technology perspective is having the functionality to converse with multiple languages within it. But from a metric perspective, milestones thus far that we've engaged in around 50,000 conversation points through our bot. We currently have around 400 SMEs on our platform, registered users on the platform, and we facilitated in excess of 2,000 individual pieces of legal guidance. So we raised investment through a SPV facilitated via Josie Angels, which is a South African-based angel investment network, and they are partners into the Afri Labs and ABAN network, it was facilitated thereon. I very much understand this from a legal due diligence and company, that side of it as well. So, and which is very much a part of what we at Lacuna Legal particularly are trying to enforce here is not that we should be reactive around a lot of the legal and these components, but have your ducks in order up front, get your systems in place, understand what your USP is, your unique selling proposition is, understand what value you are creating within the ecosystem. And in so doing, I think allow yourself a solid foundation for anyone who's understanding your company to place themselves in a favorable position with strong uniqueness surrounding you. I think better piece of advice that I was given early on in my venture, in my entrepreneurial journey, was around getting into bed with the investors early on, not necessarily getting into bed when you need something from them, but rather that open up those doors, facilitate that engagement, and get on the radar. I think it's something that we did very well there, and it ultimately allows those relationships to develop at a personal level, so that when you do engage at an investment level, they understand who you are as effectively as the jockey of the company, and they understand a bit of the nuance of what's happened over the last 6 months within that journey. I mean, ultimately, we know as startups that the majority of investment comes at this stage, in an early stage business, because of the team, because of the market opportunity, or because of a technology IP backing. And so the market you can understand in that it's an ability for you need to prove that the people want your product. But again, then in terms of the jockey, the way to control for that, in my mind, is to develop these relationships, and then for them to understand at a more in-depth level who you are as a person. Yeah, I mean, I think there's at its highest level, there are probably two ways to go about this. I'd say just one is going to networking events and engaging and be willing to kind of listen, just making those connections and everything else. The second option, which is what we followed through with, is a slightly more systematic approach, I'd say, to that, which is that, and this is what we did, was you create a list of 100 investors who are in your growth stage, who are in your sector, and who are in your ticket size. Understand those three parameters across and develop our list of 20, 30, 50 investment houses, and then open up those communications so that you know that they are there by face value. You already have the engagement because you are what they're looking for. After that, it's then about convincing them that you're the right jockey or the right horse to ride ultimately. So we did have a plan. The plan at that point was to extend on our internal capabilities, to support our CTO effectively at the time, with a technical and product owner, someone that could take off the lighter loads from a technical capacity, but also someone that understood product ownership at its largest level and was able to then do a lot of outreach from almost a marketing perspective to SME and business owners in South Africa, guised as we'd like to find out more information around what you're looking for. And I think the two of those go hand in hand. The next capability that we hired for was increasing our marketing budget, and making sure that as a brand we are kind of synonymous with what legal services and legal education is about within the early stage venture development space. So that was largely where we were at. We'd understood where our MVP was. We'd got some good traction behind us at that point. We just needed more support capabilities, just to manage kind of internal ticketing, and to extend on our brand outreach effectively. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of ways to look at this. Ultimately, from the benefits type scenario, obviously, from my perception of where those funds are coming from, it's ultimately from as a kind of tax write-off space or something to that effect, charity within the European model. So obviously that makes sense on that side if that is the model. From an internal perspective, from our side of it, what it immediately allowed us to do was double effectively the investment that our angels had brought through. So what that in essence means is that rather from us being for them coming in at 20% for X% of our company, the company was suddenly at 1.8x of that value. So investors, their return, it was almost immediate in terms of what their in terms of the company valuation and the like. And so that was it made it almost a fairly no-brainer type decision for the angels to get involved with, because they suddenly have this capacity to leverage their X amount into 2X as a matter of signing a contract. And so I think it creates a very appealing scenario for investors to get involved with, and ultimately to leverage on what they are doing. From our perspective, obviously there's huge benefits in being able to extend on internal resources, to extend on a cash flow cycle there, and yeah, obviously I think within startup space, having that cash flow cycle, having a year and a half in the bank is incredible, rather than having to have 9 months in the bank. And so it just, I think, allows that level of organically capturing a market, rather than needing to perform quite an unreasonable sprint, which I think most startups have to do just to get their foot in the door. Yeah, I mean, it's been a hard one for us to, I suppose, understand what genuine impact is. Again, I don't think we're aiming at vanity metrics here. So is it good enough to say that someone asked a legal question and got an appropriate legal response? I think some would say that is, but in our mind, we want end to end. There's no one leaving our space that feels unsupported. And so does our metric then become how many follow-on facilitations occurred? But again, it doesn't then account for people that might have been solved using the AI bot. And so from an impact perspective, I think it's ultimately, I think, just been a process of understanding, of conversing with SMEs that we've not noticed, or that the data suggests are using the platform more often. It's understanding what that, at almost a qualitative level, what that impact has been and where that benefit lies. But in our mind, in terms of where we want to play and where we envision our value within this community, it's ultimately in a sense of, are people able to find requisite solutions at affordable rates, and in far-flung regions across South Africa. And I think the diversity of data that we get within that, showing the breadth of where the solution has been applied, showing the investment that's been raised on the backside of it, is, I think, a really positive side from a impact perspective. In terms of lives affected, I mean, as I said, there's about 50,000 conversations via the platform, and the feedback on the backside of that is that 92% of people are saying they suggest it to family and friends. I think 86% of them, these numbers might vary a little bit. I think about 86% of them said they'd be willing to pay for services within it. And so, yeah, I think we can gauge from those spaces that the tool is creating value, and implicit within that impact. From an investment standpoint, so one side of it is the ethics and all of that, and the data. I think we can make mention to in a moment. But the biggest side for me, I think, is recognizing that that AI has ultimately become something which one can utilize effectively off the shelf. So as far as if you looked at the investment landscape 2 years ago, you would have seen a whole bunch of companies there that were developing out LLMs according to their industries and the like. My perception of what's happened with almost as the synonymousness of industry with something like GPT or OpenAI is that IP no longer is valuable as a company level asset, unless it's ultimately the application thereof, and which in and of itself means market share. And so, yeah, it's, I think, something to consider in this technological age now, is that there's a lot of AI-driven solutions coming out, but where your back end is based on someone else's tool, it's very hard to phrase that as an IP for consideration from a valuations perspective. And yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of companies dropping off after this bubble because it is no longer an investable component of IP or in its isolation. It very much has to be about market capture and working within that. Yeah, obviously AI at the moment has become incredibly, it's just proliferated across the space. And I think an example of maybe how the landscape has changed is that a year and a half ago, just to give context there, so we as Legal Fundi we got part of OpenAI's beta program in 2021. And as part of our initial expression, and we said we wanted to change the face of law, and they said cool, and so they gave us open access to their beta program. We integrated that and we ran with it, and we used everything else around it, and it was only until what we've seen in the uptake in the last 3-4 months has been nearly on par with what we saw for the previous year and a half. So I think there's an incredible amount of trust that people now have within AI. It's no longer this strange thing on the side that I can engage with, but it might be wrong. It's actually that we've developed this kind of intrinsic trust within the space.